The humiliation was broadcast across 17 star systems. Staff Sergeant James Mackenzie watched the Hegemony Empire's propaganda feed from the mess hall of Forward Operating Base Hadrian's Wall, his tea growing cold in his hands as he witnessed Earth's Third Fleet burning against the void. The images were crystal clear, shot from multiple angles to ensure maximum psychological impact, human ships breaking apart under alien weaponry, escape pods ejecting like scattered seeds, the flagship UES Wellington exploding in a silent fireball that painted the darkness with humanity's defeat. "Behold the weakness of the primitive Earth forces," the Hegemony narrator announced, its voice carrying the smug certainty of absolute superiority. Their crude technology and undisciplined tactics pose no threat to the righteous expansion of the Empire. Let this serve as a lesson to any who would resist our dominion. Around Mackenzie, the special operations personnel of Hadrian's Wall watched in grim silence. These weren't regular military, they were the sharp end of humanity's military capability, drawn from elite units across Earth and her colonies. SAS, Delta Force, Spetsnaz, GIGN, and dozens of other units that existed in the shadows between diplomacy and open warfare. 3,000 good people, muttered Captain Sarachin, commander of the base's intelligence section. Gone because some admiral thought conventional tactics would work against energy shields and gravity weapons. Mackenzie said nothing, but his jaw tightened imperceptibly. He'd served with some of the Third Fleet's crew during the colonial insurgency on Kepler 442b. Professional soldiers who deserved better than being turned into propaganda for alien supremacists. The broadcast continued, showing Hegemony forces occupying Earth installations across the Outer Rim. The aliens moved with the casual confidence of a species that had never encountered meaningful resistance, their insectoid forms graceful in powered armor that made them look like mechanical angels of death. The human species lacks the genetic superiority necessary for interstellar warfare, the narrator continued. Their emotional instability and primitive social structures make them unsuitable for anything beyond agricultural labor and resource extraction. The Empire offers them the privilege of serving a higher evolutionary order. Genetic superiority, Mackenzie finally spoke, his Scottish accent lending an edge to the words. That's what they're calling it. Major Thompson, the base commander, looked up from his tactical display. Something on your mind, Sergeant? Mackenzie stood, his movement fluid and economical in the way that marked professional operators. At first glance, he looked unremarkable, average height, lean build, brown hair going gray at the temples. The kind of man who could disappear in any crowd on any world. Only his eyes gave him away, carrying the flat calm of someone who had made violence into an art form. Permission to speak freely, sir? Always, James. The Empire's made a mistake. Mackenzie gestured toward the propaganda feed, where Hegemony forces were herding human prisoners like livestock. They think what they've seen is the best we can do. And it isn't? Mackenzie's smile was thin and cold. Sir, they've fought our diplomats in uniform. They haven't met our professionals yet. Around the mess hall, conversations gradually quieted as other operators tuned into the exchange. These were people who understood the distinction Mackenzie was drawing, the difference between conventional forces designed to hold ground and project power, and special operations units designed to break things and kill people with surgical precision. The Third Fleet was brave, Mackenzie continued, but they fought the kind of war the Empire expected. Ship to ship, formation against formation, following rules of engagement written by politicians who've never seen combat. What are you suggesting? Major Thompson asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. I'm suggesting that the Empire has made two critical errors in judgment. Mackenzie's voice carried the quiet confidence of someone stating facts rather than opinions. First, they think conventional capability equals total capability. Second, they've decided to make this personal. He pointed to the screen, where a Hegemony commander was delivering a speech about human inferiority from the bridge of the captured UES Wellington. That's Admiral Harrison's ship, sir. I served under him during the Titan Station siege. Good man. Good commander. And these alien bastards are using his bridge as a propaganda studio. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Mackenzie wasn't just talking about military capability, he was talking about honor, respect for the dead, and the kind of professional courtesy that even enemies were supposed to observe. "What did you have in mind?" Thompson asked carefully. Mackenzie was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical displays that showed hegemony positions throughout the sector. When he spoke again, his voice carried the matter-of-fact tone of someone describing a routine training exercise. "The Empire wants to demonstrate their superiority? Fine. Let them. But demonstrations work both ways." He turned to face Thompson directly. "Sir, I'd like to request permission to conduct a reconnaissance patrol." Thompson raised an eyebrow. "Reconnaissance of what, exactly?" "The enemy's assumptions about human capability." The Major studied Mackenzie's face, reading the subtle signs that came from years of working with elite operators. The slight tension around the eyes that meant a plan was already forming. The way his shoulders had settled into the relaxed readiness that preceded action. The complete absence of doubt or hesitation. "This wouldn't be one of your training exercises that somehow results in strategic targets spontaneously exploding, would it, James?" "Sir, I'm wounded that you'd suggest such a thing." Mackenzie's deadpan delivery didn't quite hide the ghost of a smile. "I'm simply proposing to gather intelligence on enemy capabilities and disposition. If certain installations happen to experience technical difficulties during my observation period, well, that's hardly my fault. The nearest hegemony position is a forward operating base on Kepler 438c, Captain Chen offered, pulling up holographic displays. 16 light hours from here. They've been using it to coordinate raids against civilian shipping." "Personnel complement?" Mackenzie asked. "Approximately 200. Mixed infantry and armor support, plus technical staff. Standard hegemony doctrine suggests they'll have energy shields, automated defenses, and orbital surveillance coverage." Mackenzie nodded as if she described a weekend camping trip. "Transport options?" "Stealth insertion via modified Pegasus-class courier. We can get you within 10 kilometers of the target undetected." "Extraction?" "Same route, assuming you can reach the pickup point." "What about support?" Major Thompson asked. "This is a suicide mission for one person." Mackenzie's smile was genuine this time, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had made the impossible look routine for 15 years. "Sir, with respect, the Empire just spent considerable effort explaining to the galaxy why they don't need to worry about humans. It would be rude to prove them wrong with an entire team." He paused, checking his watch. "Besides, I work better alone. Fewer variables to manage." The modified Pegasus-class courier Shadow Runner approached Kepler 438c like a whisper in the void. Mackenzie sat in the cramped passenger compartment, running final equipment checks with the methodical precision that had kept him alive through 100 operations on a dozen worlds. His gear was laid out on the fold-down table in front of him, each piece selected for maximum efficiency and minimum signature. 60 minutes to insertion point, came the pilot's voice through the intercom. Lieutenant Rachel Morrison was one of the few people crazy enough to volunteer for stealth insertions deep behind enemy lines, and skilled enough to make them look routine. "Copy," Mackenzie replied, sealing the last of his equipment into tactical pouches. His loadout was deliberately minimal, no heavy weapons, no explosives that would show up on sensors, nothing that couldn't be explained as standard reconnaissance gear if he was captured. What the inventory didn't show was that James Mackenzie could turn almost anything into a weapon. "Enemy base coming into visual range," Morrison announced. "Patching through the surveillance feed now." The small display screen flickered to life, showing the hegemony forward operating base from high altitude. The installation was built into a natural depression in the planet's rocky surface, with defensive positions covering all the obvious approaches. Energy shields created a translucent dome over the main structures, and Mackenzie could see the distinctive signatures of automated defense turrets scanning for threats. "Looks like they're taking security seriously," Morrison observed. Mackenzie studied the layout with professional interest. The base followed standard hegemony doctrine, overlapping fields of fire, multiple defensive layers, and clear zones around the perimeter that would channel attackers into predetermined kill zones. It was exactly what he'd expected. "They're defending against an army," he said quietly. "Not a ghost." "Come again?" "Their entire defensive philosophy is built around stopping conventional attacks. Large formations, armored vehicles, air support." Mackenzie traced the defensive positions on the screen. "They're watching for what they think humans are capable of, not what we're actually capable of." "And the difference is?" Mackenzie's smile was invisible in the darkened compartment, but Morrison could hear it in his voice. "The difference, Lieutenant, is that I'm not going to attack their base." "You're not?" "No. I'm going to visit it." "There's a distinction." 20 minutes later, Mackenzie was sealed into his insertion pod, waiting for the drop that would put him on the surface of an alien world. The pod was little more than a sophisticated coffin, designed to slip through sensor nets and deliver a single operator to a predetermined location. 30 seconds to drop, Morrison announced. Weather on the surface is clear, temperature -15 Celsius, low wind. Enemy patrol patterns are holding steady. Understood. See you in 48 hours. Try not to start any wars while I'm gone. I'll do my best. The insertion pod ejected from Shadowrunner's belly like a seed from a dying flower, beginning its silent fall toward the planet's surface. Mackenzie felt the familiar sensation of free fall, followed by the gentle tug of the pod's stealth chute deploying. In the darkness around him, he was invisible to sensors, undetectable to the hegemony forces waiting below. 15 minutes later, the pod touched down in a rocky outcropping 6 kilometers from the enemy base. Mackenzie emerged into the alien night, automatically cataloging environmental conditions and threat indicators. The air was thin but breathable, the gravity slightly lighter than Earth normal. Perfect conditions for what he had planned. He buried the insertion pod under a pile of rocks, erasing all traces of his arrival. Then he began to move. Mackenzie covered the distance to the hegemony base like a shadow given purpose. Years of training had taught him to read terrain, to use natural cover, to become invisible in plain sight. He avoided the obvious routes, staying away from patrol paths and sensor clusters, moving when the alien guards were looking elsewhere. 2 hours after landing, he was lying on a ridge overlooking the base, studying it through night vision scopes that turned the alien installation into a green-tinted map of possibilities. The base was larger than the intelligence briefings had suggested. Mackenzie counted at least 300 personnel, not 200. More importantly, he identified the structure's purpose. This wasn't just a forward operating base. It was a command and control center, coordinating hegemony operations across the entire sector. "Interesting," he murmured into his throat mic, recording observations for later analysis. "Primary target appears to be a sector command facility. Multiple communication arrays, heavy data processing equipment, senior staff quarters." He spent another hour mapping the base's routines. Guard rotations, patrol patterns, the timing of supply deliveries and personnel movements. The hegemony ran their base with military precision, but precision could become predictability in the hands of someone who knew how to exploit it. Security protocols are advanced but standardized, he continued recording. Energy shields rotate in 47-minute cycles. Automated defenses have blind spots at bearing 270 and 045 degrees. Guard changeover occurs every 4 hours with a 3-minute overlap period. By dawn, Mackenzie had identified 17 different ways to penetrate the base's defenses. More importantly, he'd identified the perfect way to make his point. The hegemony had made a show of broadcasting their superiority to the galaxy. They'd turned human suffering into entertainment, used Admiral Harrison's ship as a propaganda studio. They thought conventional military defeat meant total defeat. Time to teach them the difference between a military and a warrior. Mackenzie began his approach as the alien sun crested the horizon, using the long shadows in the guard's shift change to slip through their defensive perimeter like a ghost returning to haunt the living. The Empire was about to learn why Earth's Special Operations Forces didn't advertise their capabilities. They preferred to demonstrate them. As Mackenzie reached the outer defensive line, he activated a small device that would record everything he was about to do. Not for intelligence purposes, for education. Because when he was finished here, the galaxy was going to understand that humans had been holding back. And restraint, as any predator knows, should never be mistaken for inability. The real war was about to begin. Mackenzie moved through the hegemony base like death in tactical gear. The first guard never saw him coming. The alien sentry was focused on external threats, watching for ships or vehicles approaching from the designated attack corridors. He wasn't looking for a single human who moved like smoke through shadows, who had spent 15 years learning to kill without making a sound. Mackenzie approached from the guard's blind spot, using a drainage conduit that the base's architects had never considered a security vulnerability. The alien, an insectoid creature nearly 7 feet tall in powered armor, stood at his post with the casual alertness of someone who had never encountered a real threat. That changed when Mackenzie's arm locked around his throat. The guard tried to raise an alarm, but Mackenzie's grip crushed his vocal cords before he could make a sound. The powered armor that made the aliens so dangerous in conventional combat became a liability in close quarters, restricting his movement and preventing him from bringing his weapons to bear. 30 seconds later, the guard was unconscious and hidden behind a storage container. Mackenzie had his access card, his communication device, and a detailed understanding of the base's internal security protocols. More importantly, he had confirmed what he'd suspected from his external reconnaissance: the hegemony had designed their defenses to stop an army, not a professional. First checkpoint cleared, he whispered into his throat mic, recording his progress. Enemy security protocols are sophisticated but predictable. Standard military doctrine, properly executed but lacking innovation. Mackenzie studied the stolen access card, noting the alien script that identified the guard's clearance level and authorized areas. The device was biometrically locked, but that only mattered if the sensors were looking for the right biometrics. He pulled a small device from his kit, a signal duplicator that had been reverse-engineered from captured hegemony technology. The device couldn't break the alien encryption, but it could record and replay the access card's authorization signal. Combined with the guard's communication device, it would give him freedom of movement throughout the base for exactly 47 minutes, the length of time before the next security rotation. Mackenzie moved deeper into the installation, following maintenance corridors and service passages that the aliens used but didn't heavily monitor. His movements were economical and precise, each step calculated to avoid sensor sweeps and patrol routes. He reached the base's central command center in 23 minutes. The facility was exactly what he'd expected from his external reconnaissance, a sophisticated nerve center coordinating hegemony operations across multiple star systems. Holographic displays showed ship movements, resource allocations, and target priorities throughout the sector. Most importantly, they showed the locations of every human installation the aliens were planning to attack. Mackenzie photographed everything with a camera no larger than a button, building a complete intelligence picture of hegemony strategic planning. The information alone would be worth the risk of the mission, but he wasn't finished. In the center of the command facility, he found what he was looking for: the primary communications array that broadcast hegemony propaganda across the galaxy. The same system that had been used to humiliate Earth's forces and mock human capability. Time for a counter-broadcast. Mackenzie attached a small device to the communications console, a transmitter that would piggyback on the alien's own signal when activated. The message he was about to send wouldn't reach Earth for several hours, but it would reach every hegemony installation in the sector immediately. He activated his recording device and began to speak, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. This message is for the command authority of the hegemony empire. My name is Staff Sergeant James Mackenzie, Special Air Service, Earth Defense Force. 47 minutes ago, I penetrated your forward operating base on Kepler 438c. I am currently standing in your primary command center, having bypassed your energy shields, automated defenses, and security personnel without raising an alarm. He paused, checking his watch. The security rotation would begin in 15 minutes. Your recent broadcasts have suggested that Earth's military forces are primitive and ineffective. This assessment is based on your experience fighting our conventional units, soldiers trained to hold ground, protect civilians, and follow rules of engagement designed by politicians. Mackenzie moved to the tactical display, photographing deployment schedules and target lists. You have not yet encountered Earth's Special Operations Forces. We are not trained to hold ground, we are trained to take it. We do not protect civilians, we eliminate threats to civilians. And we do not follow politicians' rules, we follow results. He attached a data tab to the main computer system, beginning the download of everything the hegemony had planned for the next 6 months. I am currently downloading your complete operational database. By the time you receive this message, Earth Command will know the location, strength, and objectives of every hegemony unit in this sector. Your strategic surprise has been eliminated. Mackenzie checked the download progress, 60% complete. He had maybe 5 minutes before someone noticed the data breach. More importantly, you have demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of human military doctrine. You believe that because you defeated our conventional forces, you have defeated humanity. This is incorrect. He moved to the propaganda broadcast station, noting the recordings of human defeats that the aliens plan to transmit. Conventional forces are designed to fight wars. Special operations forces are designed to end them. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed to their limits. Congratulations, you're about to find out. The download completed. Mackenzie pocketed the data storage device and began placing small charges throughout the command center, not explosives, but electromagnetic pulse devices that would fry every piece of electronic equipment in the facility. In approximately 6 minutes, I will be leaving your installation the same way I entered, undetected and unopposed. Your command center will experience a complete system failure, requiring several days to restore functionality. Your security footage will show nothing, because I was never here. He activated the EMP charges with a timer that would give him time to clear the facility. I want to be very clear about what has happened here. One human soldier, armed with standard equipment and operating alone, has compromised your most secure installation, stolen your strategic planning data, and disabled your command and control capability. I accomplished this not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through professional competence. Mackenzie retraced his path through the facility, moving past guards who had no idea their base had been infiltrated. You have made the mistake of confusing restraint with weakness. Earth's conventional forces fight according to civilized rules of warfare because that is who we choose to be, not because that is all we are capable of. You wanted to see our true capabilities? Consider this a demonstration. He reached the perimeter fence as his timer showed 2 minutes remaining. I will be returning to Earth with a complete intelligence package on your operations. I suggest you use the time wisely to reconsider your assessment of human military capability. Because if you choose to continue this war, you will not be fighting our diplomats in uniform anymore. Mackenzie slipped through the same drainage conduit he'd used to enter, moving away from the base with the fluid grace of someone who had made the impossible look routine. You will be fighting our professionals. And we are very, very good at our job. As he reached the extraction point, the EMP charges detonated throughout the Hegemony Command Center. Every computer, communication array, and display system in the facility died simultaneously, plunging the aliens into confused darkness. By the time they restored power and discovered the security breach, Mackenzie was already aboard Shadowrunner, heading back to Earth with enough intelligence to turn the tide of the war. But more importantly, he had sent a message that would reach every hegemony installation in the sector. Humanity had been playing by civilized rules. That was about to change. The message reached Hegemony High Command on Axis Prime 18 hours after Mackenzie's extraction. Admiral Fexteron, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony's military forces, watched the humans recording with growing disbelief. The security footage from the Kepler 438C facility confirmed what should have been impossible: a single enemy operative had penetrated their most advanced defensive installation, operated freely within their command center, and departed without being detected. "This is obviously fabricated," Sub-Admiral Kexteran said, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. No primitive species could achieve such penetration of our defenses. Thextaron studied the data readouts that accompanied the security footage. Every piece of intelligence the humans had claimed to steal was indeed missing from the facility's computers. The EMP damage was real. The timeline matched perfectly. If it is fabricated, the Admiral said quietly, then how do you explain the complete loss of our operational database? How do you explain the human knowledge of our ship positions, our target priorities, our defensive arrangements? Espionage. Bribery. Coercion of our personnel. All of our personnel on Kepler 438c have been subjected to loyalty verification. No evidence of compromise was found. Thextaron activated the recording again, studying the human's calm, professional demeanor. This operative accomplished something our own intelligence services rated as impossible. Then our rating systems require adjustment. Thextaron was beginning to understand that their rating systems weren't the only things requiring adjustment. For 2 years, the hegemony had been expanding into human space with casual confidence, treating Earth's forces as a minor obstacle to be swept aside. Their conventional victories had supported this assessment. Human ships and tactics were indeed inferior to hegemony technology and doctrine. But this recording suggested they had been fighting the wrong war entirely. Summon the Intelligence Council, Thextaron ordered. I want a complete reassessment of human military capability, focusing specifically on their special operations forces. Sir, our assessments are based on extensive combat data. Our assessments are based on fighting human diplomats. Thextaron's voice carried the sharp edge of someone realizing a critical mistake. Look at this operative's equipment, standard reconnaissance gear, no advanced technology, nothing our own soldiers don't carry. Yet he achieved penetration that our best infiltrators would consider impossible. The recording played again, showing Mackenzie's matter-of-fact explanation of his mission. There was no boasting, no theatrical threats, just a professional briefing from someone reporting on a routine training exercise. That was what made it terrifying. Sir, Sub-Admiral Kextaran said carefully, even if this human's capabilities are genuine, he represents only one individual. Our strategic position remains sound. Does it? Thextaron pulled up holographic displays showing hegemony deployments throughout human space. Look at our force distribution. We have our best units concentrated in obvious targets, major colony worlds, industrial centers, military bases. Standard conquest doctrine. Correct strategic positioning for conventional warfare. But what if they're not fighting a conventional war anymore? Thextaron traced possible infiltration routes on the tactical display. If this operative's capabilities are representative of their special forces, then every installation we have is vulnerable to exactly this kind of penetration. The implications were staggering. The hegemony's entire strategy depended on maintaining secure communication and coordination between scattered forces. If humans could compromise their command centers at will, then their technological advantages became meaningless. Immediate security upgrades for all installations, Thextaron ordered. Triple guard rotations, randomized patrol patterns, complete electromagnetic screening for all facilities. Sir, such measures will require significant resources. Then allocate them. The Admiral's mandibles spread in a display of aggressive authority. This human has demonstrated that our current security is inadequate. Until we understand the full extent of their capabilities, we must assume that any installation can be compromised. As the Intelligence Council began implementing emergency security protocols across the Empire, Thextaron studied the human's message again. There was something in the operative's tone that suggested this had been more than an intelligence-gathering mission. It had been a warning. The human had specifically mentioned that Earth's conventional forces fought according to civilized rules of warfare because that was who they chose to be, not because that was all they were capable of. The implication was clear, those rules were about to change. Sub-Admiral, what is our current intelligence on Earth's special operations capabilities? Kextaran consulted his data displays nervously. Limited, sir. We have focused our intelligence gathering on conventional military units, industrial capacity, and political leadership. How many special operations personnel does Earth possess? Unknown. Estimates range from several thousand to several hundred thousand, depending on classification criteria. Vexteron felt something cold settling in his primary stomach. Several hundred thousand? Earth maintains multiple special operations organizations across their various military branches. The precise numbers are classified at levels we have not been able to penetrate. The Admiral stared at the tactical displays, suddenly seeing their strategic position in a very different light. They had been treating Earth as a primitive opponent with inferior technology and tactics. But if this operative was representative of their special forces, then the hegemony wasn't fighting a primitive species, they were fighting a species that had been deliberately fighting beneath their capabilities. Sir, Kekstran said urgently, we're receiving priority communications from 17 installations across the sector. Multiple facilities are reporting security breaches, equipment failures, and personnel disappearances. Vexteron felt his blood turn cold. When did these incidents begin? Approximately 6 hours ago. All facilities report similar patterns, no obvious signs of intrusion, but critical systems experiencing unexplained failures. The timeline matched perfectly with when Earth Command would have received Mackenzie's intelligence package. The humans hadn't just sent one operative, they had deployed an entire network of special operations teams simultaneously. Casualties? Vexteron asked. Unknown. Personnel are simply missing. No bodies, no evidence of violence, no security footage of any incidents. They're taking prisoners, the Admiral realized. Extracting intelligence from our personnel and removing evidence of their operations. As more reports flooded in from across the sector, Vexteron began to understand the magnitude of their mistake. They hadn't been fighting Earth's military, they had been fighting Earth's police force. The real military was just getting started. Orders, sir? Kekstran asked. Vexteron studied the tactical displays, seeing their scattered forces suddenly looking very vulnerable and very isolated. Earth's Special Operations Forces were demonstrating that they could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning or detection. Signal all commands, he said finally. Implement emergency defensive protocols. Assume that any installation can be compromised at any time. And begin immediate preparations for strategic withdrawal to defensive positions. Sir, are you ordering a retreat? I'm ordering a reassessment. Vexteron looked at Mackenzie's recording one more time, finally understanding what the human had been trying to tell them. We thought we were fighting a war of conquest against a primitive species. But this operative has just informed us that we're actually in a war of survival against professionals. And the difference is? The difference, Sub-Admiral, is that wars of conquest can be negotiated. Wars of survival can only be won or lost. As emergency alerts flooded in from across the hegemony's occupation zone, Admiral Vexteron realized that they had made the oldest mistake in military history, they had underestimated their enemy. The humans had just finished explaining exactly how badly. Within 72 hours of Mackenzie's demonstration, the war had fundamentally changed. Admiral Vexteron stood in the Hegemony High Command Center on Axis Prime, watching real-time reports pour in from across their occupation zone. What had been a stable conquest operation was rapidly becoming a nightmare of compromised installations, missing personnel, and destroyed infrastructure. Report from Kepler 442c, Sub-Admiral Kekstran announced, his voice carrying the strain of 3 days without sleep. The orbital processing platform has gone offline. No communication with the command staff, and automated systems show critical reactor instabilities. Sabotage? Unknown. Security teams found no evidence of intrusion, but the platform's fusion reactors are now operating outside safe parameters. Evacuation is required within 18 hours or risk complete system failure. Vexteron studied the tactical display, where red icons marked compromised facilities across 17 star systems. The pattern was unmistakable. Earth's Special Operations Forces were systematically dismantling the hegemony's strategic infrastructure. How many installations have we lost? 47 confirmed compromised. Another 23 showing anomalous system behaviors that suggest infiltration. Kexteran's mandibles clicked nervously. Sir, we're losing strategic capability faster than our conventional forces can advance. And casualties? Minimal direct casualties, but over 300 personnel missing. No bodies recovered, no signs of violence, no evidence of how they were extracted. That was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Earth's response. The humans weren't simply killing hegemony personnel, they were making them disappear completely. Every missing soldier, technician, and commander represented intelligence flowing back to Earth, along with access codes, tactical knowledge, and strategic planning. Sir, came another report from the communications station, Priority 1 message from Fleet Admiral Zexteron at Kepler 438c. The main display activated, showing the insectoid features of one of the hegemony's most experienced commanders. Zexteron looked haggard, his usual composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled frustration. Admiral Zexteron, I must report the complete failure of our security enhancement protocols. Despite implementing every countermeasure we could devise, human operatives have successfully penetrated 6 installations in my command sector. Describe their capabilities. Beyond our current understanding, Zexteron replied grimly. They move through our defenses as if they don't exist. They disable our equipment without triggering alarms. They extract our personnel without leaving evidence. And they accomplish all of this while remaining completely invisible to our surveillance systems. Zexteron felt the familiar weight of strategic miscalculations settling on his shoulders. What are your losses? Material damage is manageable, the humans seem more interested in intelligence gathering than destruction. But personnel losses are catastrophic. I've lost 40% of my command staff, including 3 senior intelligence officers who had access to our complete operational database. Meaning? Meaning the humans now know everything we know about our own operations in this sector. The implications were staggering. Earth's Special Operations Forces weren't just conducting raids, they were systematically harvesting the hegemony's intelligence network, turning their own information systems against them. Admiral, came an urgent voice from the intelligence section, we're receiving a priority communication from Earth Command. They're requesting direct diplomatic contact. Zexteron exchanged glances with his staff. In 2 years of warfare, Earth had never requested diplomatic communication. Their previous interactions had been limited to demands for withdrawal and threats of retaliation. Put them through. The display changed to show a human military officer, a woman with silver hair and the kind of calm authority that marked senior command personnel. Her uniform carried insignia that Zexteron's intelligence briefings identified as belonging to Earth's Strategic Operations Command. Admiral Zexteron, she said without preamble, I am General Margaret Harrison, Director of Earth Special Operations. I believe we need to have a conversation. I am listening, General. 72 hours ago, one of my operators demonstrated certain capabilities that your forces had not previously encountered. Since then, my teams have been conducting what we call a capability demonstration across your occupation zone. Your teams have been conducting terrorist attacks against civilian installations. My teams have been conducting surgical strikes against military targets, Harrison corrected calmly. If we were conducting terrorist attacks, Admiral, you would be measuring your losses in thousands of dead, not hundreds of missing. The fact that your personnel are disappearing rather than dying should tell you something about our intentions. Zexteron studied the human commander's expression, noting the complete absence of bluster or intimidation tactics. She was speaking with the calm professionalism of someone delivering a briefing. What are your intentions, General? To end this war before it becomes something neither of our species wants it to become. Harrison's eyes carried the flat calm that Zexteron was learning to associate with Earth's military professionals. Admiral, your forces have been fighting our conventional military units, soldiers trained to protect civilian populations and follow rules of engagement designed to minimize casualties. And now? Now you've demonstrated that conventional warfare isn't sufficient to protect our people. So I've been authorized to deploy assets that don't operate under those same constraints. Zexteron felt cold certainty settling in his mind. You're threatening to escalate. I'm explaining that escalation has already occurred, Harrison replied. 72 hours ago, your forces were fighting Earth's police. Now you're fighting Earth's military. The question is whether you want to keep pushing until you're fighting Earth's killers. Clarify that distinction. Harrison leaned forward slightly, and Thexteron saw something in her expression that made his skin crawl. Admiral, every human society develops 3 types of warriors. First are the Guardians, soldiers who protect their people and follow rules designed to preserve civilization. Second are the military, professionals who fight wars according to established doctrine and strategic objectives. Third are the killers, specialists who exist to eliminate threats by any means necessary. And which type has been operating in our territory? So far? Military professionals conducting precision operations with specific strategic objectives. Harrison paused. But Admiral, if this war continues, if your forces keep targeting civilian populations, then I will be forced to deploy the third type. And they don't take prisoners. The threat was delivered with the same calm professionalism as everything else, which somehow made it more terrifying than any dramatic declaration of war. What are you proposing? Thexteron asked. A demonstration of good faith from both sides. You withdraw from 3 specific systems that contain primarily civilian populations. In exchange, my operations against your command infrastructure will cease for 96 hours. And then? Then we negotiate a permanent end to this conflict, or we continue the war under new rules. Harrison's expression didn't change. Rules that favor the side with better special operations capabilities. Thexteron studied the tactical displays, seeing their strategic position with new clarity. The hegemony's conventional military superiority was meaningless if Earth's special forces could compromise their command and control systems at will. General, what assurance do I have that this offer is made in good faith? The assurance that if I wanted to destroy your forces, Admiral, they would already be destroyed. Harrison's voice carried absolute certainty. My operators have been inside your most secure installations, accessed your most classified systems, and extracted your most valuable personnel. If our intention was destruction rather than negotiation, you would be measuring losses in exploded installations, not missing staff. You're saying you've been showing restraint. I'm saying we've been showing you the difference between military operations and total war. Harrison leaned back. Admiral, in the past 72 hours, my teams have identified every critical vulnerability in your occupation zone. We know where your ammunition is stored, where your reactors are located, where your command staff sleeps. We could turn your entire operation into radioactive debris within hours. But you haven't. Because that's not who we choose to be. But Admiral, if you force us to become something else, we are very, very good at it. Thexteron was quiet for a long moment, processing what he was hearing. The humans weren't just demonstrating superior capability, they were offering him a way to end the war with honor intact. What specific systems are you requiring us to evacuate? Kepler 442c, Ross 128b, and Wolf 359c. All 3 contain primarily civilian infrastructure with minimal strategic value. Those systems contain significant resource extraction operations, which can be negotiated as part of a comprehensive peace agreement, Harrison replied. Admiral, I'm offering you the chance to end this war as a strategic withdrawal rather than a military defeat. I suggest you consider the alternative carefully. Thexteron looked at his staff, seeing the same realization in their expressions that he felt in his own mind. The hegemony had 2 choices: negotiate from a position of relative strength, or continue fighting until Earth's special forces dismantled their entire occupation infrastructure. I will need to consult with High Command. You have 24 hours, Harrison said. After that, my teams resume their capability demonstrations, and the next phase will be significantly more destructive. The communication ended, leaving the hegemony command center in tense silence. Sir, Sub-Admiral Kexteran said carefully, do you believe their claims about being able to destroy our installations? Thexteron thought about Staff Sergeant Mackenzie's casual penetration of their most secure facility, about the 100 missing personnel, about the systematic compromise of their command infrastructure. I believe, Sub-Admiral, that we have been fighting a war against people who were deliberately losing. He activated the communication system to contact Hegemony High Command. And I believe we should accept their offer before they decide to stop losing. As emergency conferences began across the Hegemony command structure, Admiral Fexteron realized that Earth had just taught them the most important lesson in military strategy. Never confuse an enemy's restraint with their limitations. The humans had been playing by civilized rules not because they had to, but because they chose to. Now they were offering one last chance to end the war before those rules changed permanently. The ceasefire began at 0800 Galactic Standard Time. Staff Sergeant Mackenzie stood in the debriefing room at Forward Operating Base Hadrian's Wall, watching news feeds from across the galaxy as Hegemony forces began their withdrawal from 3 star systems. The evacuation was orderly and professional, exactly what he'd expected from an enemy that had finally understood the strategic reality they were facing. Preliminary reports suggest that Hegemony is honoring the ceasefire terms, Major Thompson announced to the assembled Special Operations personnel. No hostile actions against civilian populations, and their military units are maintaining defensive positions only. Around the room, the faces of Earth's elite warriors showed a mixture of satisfaction and professional disappointment. They had spent weeks preparing for extended operations against Hegemony installations, developing tactics and strategies for asymmetric warfare that would have made their enemies' lives very unpleasant. "What's the status on our missing people?" asked Captain Chen, referring to the hundreds of Earth personnel who had been captured during the conventional phase of the war. "All prisoners are being repatriated as part of the ceasefire agreement," Thompson replied. "First exchange ships arrive at the designated coordinates in 18 hours. Mackenzie nodded approvingly. That had been one of his primary objectives during his infiltration, gathering intelligence on POW locations and treatment. The Hegemony had been holding Earth personnel in accordance with standard military conventions, which suggested they were serious about wanting to end the war rather than escalate it. "Sir," came a voice from the communication station, Priority 1 message from Earth Command for Sergeant Mackenzie. Mackenzie moved to the secure terminal, noting the curious glances from his colleagues. Personal communications from Earth Command to individual operators were unusual unless something significant was happening. The display activated to show General Harrison, the same officer who had conducted the ceasefire negotiations. Her expression carried the calm professionalism Mackenzie had learned to associate with senior command, but there was something else, a hint of grim satisfaction. "Sergeant Mackenzie," she began, "I wanted to personally thank you for your work on Kepler 438c. Your demonstration appears to have achieved its intended effect." "Ma'am, I was just conducting reconnaissance as ordered." "Sergeant, you single-handedly shifted the strategic balance of this war. The intelligence you gathered gave us complete tactical superiority, and your educational message convinced the Hegemony that continued conflict was not in their best interests." Mackenzie remained silent, waiting for the actual reason for the communication. Generals didn't make personal calls just to deliver compliments. "However," Harrison continued, "I need you to understand the larger implications of what you've started. The Hegemony has agreed to negotiate, but they're not the only threat Earth faces. Word of your capabilities has spread throughout the galaxy, and other species are taking notice." "What kind of notice, ma'am?" "The kind that suggests we may need to deliver similar educational demonstrations in the future." Harrison's expression grew more serious. "Sergeant, you've proven that Earth's Special Operations Forces can achieve strategic objectives that our conventional military cannot. That makes you and your colleagues extremely valuable assets. And extremely visible targets," Mackenzie added, understanding the implication. "Precisely. The galaxy now knows that humans possess capabilities they hadn't previously suspected. That knowledge will affect every future interaction between Earth and alien species." Mackenzie considered this. His demonstration on Kepler 438c had been intended to end one war, but it might have prevented dozens of others by establishing Earth's credibility as a military power. "What are my orders, ma'am?" "For now, stand down and enjoy the ceasefire." "But Sergeant, I want you to begin developing training protocols for expanded special operations deployment. The hegemony won't be the last species to underestimate human capability, and we need to be ready to educate them quickly and efficiently. Understood, ma'am. One more thing, Sergeant. Your operation has been classified at the highest levels, but certain details have been declassified for strategic communication purposes. The galaxy needs to understand that Earth's restraint is a choice, not a limitation. The communication ended, leaving Mackenzie with the realization that his personal war against hegemony arrogance had become part of Earth's larger strategy for galactic relations. What was that about? Major Thompson asked. Long-term planning, Mackenzie replied. Apparently my little educational tour has convinced Command that we need to be ready for similar demonstrations in the future. More infiltration missions. More reminders that just because we choose to follow civilized rules of warfare doesn't mean we don't know how to break them. Over the following days, as the ceasefire developed into formal peace negotiations, Mackenzie watched with professional interest as the galaxy's perception of humanity began to shift. News feeds from across known space carried stories about Earth's hidden military capabilities and speculation about what other surprises the human species might be concealing. The hegemony, to their credit, had learned their lesson completely. Their negotiators arrived at the peace talks with genuine respect for Earth's position and a clear understanding that continued hostilities would not end in their favor. Final terms are being signed now, Captain Chen announced during the morning briefing. Complete hegemony withdrawal from human space, prisoner exchange, and establishment of neutral buffer zones. Most importantly, recognition of Earth as a legitimate military power with full sovereignty rights. Which means, asked Lieutenant Morrison, the pilot who had inserted Mackenzie on his original mission. Which means, Mackenzie said, that the next time someone wants to test human capabilities, they'll think twice about whether they really want to find out what we're capable of. The war was over, but Mackenzie understood that his real work was just beginning. Earth now had a reputation to maintain, the reputation of a species that fought with restraint and honor, but possessed the capability to abandon both if circumstances required it. As he prepared to return to Earth for his next assignment, Mackenzie reflected on the lesson he had taught the galaxy, that true strength was not the ability to destroy your enemies, but the wisdom to know when destruction was necessary and the skill to accomplish it quickly and efficiently when that time came. The hegemony had mocked Earth's forces, thinking they understood human military capability based on their experience fighting conventional units. They had learned, too late, that they had only seen what humans chose to show them. Staff Sergeant James Mackenzie, along with thousands of other quiet professionals, represented what humans kept hidden, not because they were ashamed of it, but because civilized beings only revealed such capabilities when civilization itself was threatened. The galaxy would remember that lesson for a very long time. And the next species that decided to test Earth's resolve would face the reality that warriors don't advertise their deadliest skills, they simply demonstrate them when necessary. The Empire had mocked Earth's forces. One SAS operative had responded. The response had been more than sufficient.